disappointed. It's just that good.
And I will say, and not only because I made the score 10 out of 10, but Biv, how many albums have we reviewed in the 5 episode? Like 20 some odd? Pretty close?
Yeah, probably.
And with some big acts, right? Bands that we both love very, very much, that we want to be album of the year material. We want to be perfect scores, and they weren't. Folks, I'm here to tell you, if you have not heard Almanac, be advised, listen to this right now. Stop the podcast if you have to. And listen to Almanac. You can always come back to us. It's fine. Seriously, check these guys out. It's an incredible album. You will not be disappointed. Pick up SAR by Almanac. Check it out. Awesome, awesome stuff. I can't recommend it more.
You know, the only reason I didn't make them Biv's best band you'd never heard of is because this album is so good. And there are so many songs that I wanted to, you know, and you already hit on them, talk about, and the sound and the elements and everything they're bringing, that segment couldn't hold everything we wanted to discuss about this.
Yeah, so, and when you're coming from Rage, who's a huge German band, I mean, you already know who Victor Smolsky is, so it's not as if you don't know who he is, even though you may not heard his new band. But I'm telling you, Victor, what you did, the direction you went in, I couldn't applaud you more. I can't stop talking about it. It's an incredible album. You got to check it out.
Home run.
That was Euphoria off of Polyphia's new album, Renaissance. And this is a review I wanted to do, and this is a review that I think is going to be debated not only between us, but even a lot of listeners out there and what you think. Polyphia, of course, is a band out of Texas, young guys who basically kicked off their first album with a almost GoFundMe like setup, release the album Muse. There's some great tracks off of that. I actually heard Muse, which I really, really liked. You know, songs like Finale and Champagne. I mean, seriously, if you don't dig the song Champagne, I question if you can even hear it. It's a great, really catchy song. Really cool. They also traveled with a lot and toured with a lot of metal acts. You have August Burns Red. You had Periphery, who they also toured with. So these are progressive metal, hardcore-like acts, if you will, that they have toured with. But you could question the fact that they're metal in the first place. And Biv did just that. I wanted to check out Polyphia's new album because, again, I liked Muse. They have Renaissance that just came out, which we're about to review for you guys now. And Biv checked it out, and one of the first things out of his mind is, dude, is this metal? I mean, do you really consider this metal? I mean, to me, I hear jazz, and I don't disagree with that. But before I give my kind of overall thoughts on these guys as a whole, Biv, what are your thoughts on the album that you got a chance to check out?
Well, it's very good. Now, to me, it's more of, I would call it more hard jazz than rock or metal. I had made the statement to you, Jason, that this is one of the few times we did talk about the album prior to the show, and that was only because of this topic. But, you know, this
yeah, because truth be told, real quick, I mean, Biv's like, do you still want to review this? Because I don't know if this is metal. I kind of liken it to more, I don't know if there's such a term, but, you know, I would consider it more heavy jazz than progressive metal, but many consider them a progressive metal band.
Well, and I don't know how, quite frankly. I don't consider it to be progressive metal or even metal, or rock for that matter. But that being said, it is very good. It's something that I could definitely see myself listening to on kind of when I want, you know, something different. And I think maybe that's where the appeal is. But I don't see it as I just simply don't see it as metal. Now, to me, it was like, I definitely heard some Lee Ritenour. Yes, I'm dropping some jazz references here that many metalheads may not know, maybe you do, Wayman Tisdale before his passing. If you had those two and then added a little bit of Balls and Chunk to it, there's Polyphia. And again, it's good. I just don't know that it's metal.
Well, here's the thing. Here are my thoughts on it overall. Just kind of scatterbrain thoughts in regards to it. First of all, one of the things that I took away from me is minus a point off the bat for having pre-programmed drums. Not cool. And I know they have a guy that tours with them, but no excuse. Maybe it's a dick move on my part, but oh well. When you don't have an actual drummer, you're going to lose a point automatically. I don't care. But the album seems less heavy for sure. Again, like we were saying before, I kind of, heavy jazz more than progressive metal. There's also lots of pop influence that I get and you hear throughout the album. So maybe you're thinking, okay, well, dude, what are you talking about? This sounds really shitty. Why would you continue to talk about this? Well, because they have such a unique and clean guitar sound. It's absolutely amazing stuff. It really is. Tim Henson, Scott LePage, for a group who's still very new, seem to really play well together, whether they do dual melodies over the top of each other or whether they do separate things, whether it's solos or little interludes or things they do. They have such an incredibly clean sound. It's unbelievable. You start out with, Culture Shock, which is the lead track, a very poppy kind of progressive song, whereas Light, which is the next song, to me is a bit more heavy. But again, don't think you're going to raise your horns up to this and go, oh, hell yeah, dude. This is metal. It's not. I would agree. In many instances, it's not. Florence is very jazz funk. And then Nightmare is actually the fourth track on the album. It's one of my favorites on the album and one of the more memorable riffs. You have some other tracks. Storm is a little bit heavier. Lots of time changes on Storm. That's the most progressive sounding song for me. Clay Gobber on bass really stands out to me. Bittersweet's a very slow kind of, beautiful song, but very slow. It's kind of the song I'd want to listen to, like if I wake up in the morning and I just turned on the Keurig and I want to brew some coffee and I want to listen to something. I'm probably not going to turn on Almanac right away first thing in the morning. This may be something I'd want to hear. And then, Ivory has a very champagne feel to it. Paradise is a really cool, weird, kind of mellowish track. There's a lot of pop. There's a lot of jazz. There is some progressive, time signature changes sound to it. Again, I do question those who consider it a part of the metal category. But considering that all they do is tour with metal bands, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Biv's wrong. What do you think, those listening to the program? Do you guys consider Polyphia a metal band? Should we have done a Polyphia review on According to Metal? Well, you tell us. We decided to do it anyway. But Biv, overall, what's your score for the album? What would you give it?
Well, it's very difficult for me because, as you know, I'm not typically an instrumental type of guy. But that being said, it is good for what it is. If this were the type of genre you were looking for, then it definitely, it does well. So for what it is, I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
Wow, that's actually better than I gave it. Interesting. But I will say, if I'm being honest, I had just as much time to listen to Polyphia as I did Metal Church, as I did any of the albums we reviewed. That I listen to Almanac more than anybody, but that shouldn't surprise you based on the score I just gave it. But anyway, I listened to Polyphia's album Renaissance way more than the Metal Church one. I really did, because it stuck with me more. There were tracks I wanted to go back and listen to. I listened to, 11. I listened to it a couple times and went, okay, I've heard that. Next. I keep going back to the Polyphia, to Renaissance, because there's a couple of tracks, Euphoria and Nightmare. Euphoria is the last track on the album, the one we just played a little bit ago. Nightmare is a great track, too. Check them out. I think it's something that if it's up your alley, you're really going to dig. However, I gave it a score less than Biv. Figure that out. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
right, that was Over the Edge by German power metal band Mob Rules off their new CD, Tales from Beyond. No, and Jason, this is one that I had high expectations of, because this is Mob Rules is a band that's been around for a long time, been very influential in the German power metal scene. So just kind of want to get your thoughts. What was your takeaways from this CD?
Well, I too go a couple years back with Mob Rules. I remember the first album I heard of theirs, which I really, really liked, which was kind of really put them on the map for me, was Radical Peace. Because they had, and we'll talk about that here in a second, actually, I'll get ahead of myself, but Radical Peace was the first album I heard from Mob Rules. Really liked what I heard. So, again, when it came out, new album coming out, we're talking albums we want to review. Biv and I were on the same page. Mob Rules album comes out. We want to check it out. I'll tell you what, I was really, really impressed with it. And a couple things that stand out to me. Yes, they're a quote-unquote power metal band, if you want to call them that. And off of their off of Tales from Beyond, don't think, though, that when you put this album on, you are going to hear a power metal album, because it doesn't come off that way to me. Dust of Vengeance may as well be a Stradivarius song. I mean, it's straight up German power metal. Here we go. That's what that sounds like to me. But I'll tell you what, as every album that Mob Rules has come out with, and I went back and listened to Radical Peace for this reason and this reason alone, they've strayed more away from the power metal sound. And to me, there's a ton, and you'll never hear me get angry about this, a ton of Iron Maiden influence on this album that stands out to me like a sore thumb. Dyke Master's Tale, Summerlead, Signs, On the Edge. The first 4 tracks off the album to me scream Iron Maiden. It just, especially Dyke Master's Tale, that may as well be something that Iron Maiden could have released at any point over the last 20 years, and you would think, with the exception of Bruce Dickinson singing, you would go, oh, that's a new Iron Maiden song. And that's, again, not a bad thing. I just saw Maiden in concert. They're unbelievable. Not faulting them for that. And I'll never get mad at a band for sounding anything like Maiden ever, ever, ever. Incredible album. I really, really like what they've done. And again, some standout tracks to me, and I just named them. But I'll say them again. Dyke Master's Tale, Summerlead, Signs, On the Edge, the first 4 tracks off of the album. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, which I think is really cool, because Mob Rules did this with Radical Peace, and I had mentioned a little bit ago of why I got into Radical Peace and why I thought it was kind of cool, is Mob Rules did something on Radical Peace, basically for most of the middle of the album, but, like a 5-track section, where they did the Oswald file. And they basically had a concept of a section of the album that was about Lee Harvey Oswald and the, John F. Kennedy assassination. And I think it's really cool because I am not, with the exception of a few, I am not a concept album metal fan. I think most of them missed the mark, even though I applaud you for trying. That's all well and good, but I'd rather have tracks stand on their own. And what Mob Rules did with Radical Peace, which is, they had, 5 or 6 songs that were separate songs and another 5 that were part of the Oswald file. Same can be said on this album. When you go to Tales from Beyond, you look at the last 3 songs on the album is A Tale from Beyond, and it's a 3-part concept song, similar kind of to the Something Wicked trilogy, if you're familiar with Iced Earth at all. That kind of vibe. 3 songs that tell one story, and it's a concept, but not the whole album is a concept album. And that's a great, I call it 3 separate tracks, I guess, technically, but it's meant to be one song, one story. And A Tale from Beyond is done very, very well, too. This was an incredibly good album, Biv, and I was really impressed with it. What did you think about it?
Well, if I wouldn't known any better, I would have swore that you read my written review.
I didn't.
You haven't, because I haven't sent it to you and it hasn't been published yet. Because our thoughts on this were so strikingly similar that I could almost be accused of plagiarism now.
Well, you shouldn't have let me talk first then, because then you could have accused me of copying you then.
Exactly. But, I definitely heard the Iron Maiden influence you were talking about. But, on the Dyke Master's Tale, now, I want to talk about that for a second. That's a 9-minute track that they open a CD with. That is ambitious because, and it's very